Well, Brian Molefe is back at Eskom. He was welcomed with song and dance, but not everyone is thrilled, of course. Mwako Ramatlodi's sensational claims once again raised the specter of state capture. Welcome to the first edition of the PolitBureau, where we attempt to make sense of the complex world of politics. I'm Thulasizwe Simelani. Your participation is vital, so do send us your video comments on the week's big political developments via WhatsApp or Twitter. In the PolitBureau today, independent political analyst Aubrey Machikwi, Daily Maverick Associate Editor Ranjani Munusami, and Director of the School of Leadership at the University of Johannesburg, Sydney Mufamadi. Welcome, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. The PolitBureau is now in session. And we start here. They were once part of the unstoppable Zuma tsunami. Remember that? But now the president wants the tripartite alliance partners to back off.
2005. Jacob Zuma takes center stage at a COSATU gathering. Side by side with union leaders, he sings. The chorus, "Solidarity is forever."
It would be best to release Honorable Jacob Zuma from his responsibilities.
That same year, Zuma is fired as deputy president. He faces corruption charges. Undeterred, COSATU backs him. The SACP also supports Zuma, and by 2007, he's leading the ANC. 2 years later, Zuma becomes president, with many workers responding to the promise of a better South Africa. But 7 years down the line, that's changed. COSATU runs out of patience as Zuma faces several controversies.
Now we are still ANC. Always. Why?
It endorses Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa as the ANC's next leader. Zuma has different ideas, backing Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. Meanwhile, the SACP is seeing red.
Either President Zuma or the people of South Africa. The ANC must choose either the people of this country or the Guptas.
The divisions come to a head at COSATU's Workers' Day rally. Zuma is booed and leaves without speaking.
Comrades, the event is hereby formally closed and you are all released.
The president isn't holding back, saying the alliance partners should focus on their own issues. The SACP in the Western Cape says the party should contest the next election on its own. That happens in 2019. One thing is already clear though. Zuma and his one-time allies are singing very different tunes. Michael Marilia, Johannesburg.
Well, let's get into the discussion. Dr. Sydney Mufamadi, thank you so much once again for being with us on the PolitBureau. This must bring back a lot of memories, but also you're probably looking at it with that academic eye and analyzing it, but at the same time drawing contrasts and comparisons with what's happening today.
Yeah, well, you know, the ANC, as we have always known it, is not the ANC of the ANC. It is the ANC of South Africa. So the people of South Africa have a right to judge it by the standards it sets for itself. It leads an alliance which is made up of itself, the South African Communist Party and COSATU, which alliance led the struggle against apartheid. Now you have a situation where there is a growing feeling in South African society that the leadership of the ANC is deviating from the values and principles which has guided that ANC itself and the alliance. It can be right, surely, to try and silence the discourse that is emerging around this issue. The ANC has an obligation to convince the people of South Africa that it remains true to what many of them supported it for.
So the question I'm asking then is, to what extent have the alliance partners failed to stake their claim to this ANC and holding it true to the values that you just talked about?
Well, all indications are that private interest, self-interest is being allowed to trump fidelity to principle. And this is not just a problem within the ANC alone, it is a problem that has infested the alliance as a whole,
sure,
which explains why there is a need for the alliance to pause and try to understand what went wrong where.
Ranjani, you followed this, we've been following this, you and I, for quite some time. Does this look familiar to you, what's happening today? A lot has happened in 12 years, as we were saying in that insert. The alliance partners were part of that unstoppable Zuma tsunami, but today they are told they talk too much about the ANC.
Well, tell us the arrangement that was made with COSATU and the SACP by President Jacob Zuma was that he would almost co-govern with them once he came to power. So, that they would, they felt as if under the previous government, they were suppressed and they were sidelined. And the whole idea, the reason why they backed President Jacob Zuma's bid for power was that he would consult them more, they would have more of a say in policy making, they would be more involved. But they found themselves more and more shafted.
As opposed to being labeled ultra-leftists.
Exactly.
As they were.
But what they actually became were useful idiots to President Zuma. And once they realized that, then you found the rebellion, first within COSATU via Zwelinzima Mavavi, and later from some of the, from NUMSA in particular. And I think that spurned the fallout. But I think that the situation you have now is a great pushback from the SACP, which you haven't seen for several years. And I think this is what's causing this state of rebellion.
Aubrey, this alliance may have worked in the struggle against apartheid, but in a post-democratic South Africa, was it flawed in terms of its design? I mean, how does a governing party go into alliance with workers who are facing various struggles, part of which they blame on the policies of the same government?
Well, you are right. Any structure or organization such as the alliance does have to respond to changes in the internal environment and changes in the external environment. But we must also remember that the alliance was not meant to last forever. It was always understood that the alliance would come to an end under two conditions. Firstly, when it completes its historic mission, which it hasn't. And secondly, when contradictions within it and between its components become so sharp that continuing with the alliance becomes untenable. The question is, have those contradictions sharpened to that extent? Because I think there's consensus that the alliance has not completed its historic mission.
You believe they have the contradictions sharpened to that extent that would lead to the alliance disintegrating?
I'm not certain they have. But I think there's a need for a strategic conversation within the ANC and within the alliance to understand what is happening here. First of all, the Freedom Charter says the people shall govern. And that has implications for the ANC. And as Dr. Mufamadi was saying, one of the implications is for the ANC and its leaders to understand that the ANC does not belong to them, that the ANC belongs to the people. And the second thing they'll have to understand is that the ANC is a product of struggle. It did not produce the struggle.
But Thulas, I think everybody wants the alliance to be what they want it to be. So President Zuma has his own formula in his head as to how the alliance should operate. So there should be a chorus line for him. COSATU sees it as a convenient platform for them to pursue their own agenda. And I think that the SACP wants to have a level of more consultation, in terms of decision making. And I think that's not what's working. You see what Gwede Mantashe is saying at the SACP in Bizo, that you need to speak to or with the ANC and not at the ANC. So there's different, I think that there is just,
But we forget, we forget to listen. Something very important we forget is that we have come full circle. This is not the first time the alliance finds itself where it is today. In the late 90s, particularly 1998, you had a situation where COSATU had to come out and call for a general strike, not once, but twice, because it was unhappy, first of all, about the policy content under the leadership of former President Thabo Mbeki in the state. But secondly, was unhappy about alliance internal operations. And so this is not new. What is happening here is a tension between two things. I think at the time of the Polokwane battle, some in the alliance thought Jacob Zuma was the useful idiot, as you said. But in the end, it turned out they were the useful idiots to him.
Aubrey, let's hold it there. I want to bring you in, Dr. Mafomadi, very quickly, just to segue from what happened at the SACP's National Imbizo. And this is sort of a related but, sort of separate topic. There was this notion by Gwede Mantashe that members of the ANC in Parliament voting with the opposition would be the ultimate sign of betrayal. Does that signal that disconnect in terms of the various roles that the alliance is supposed to play?
It does, but I must also say that it's important to locate this notion that Aubrey is talking about of the will of the people in the broad context of what we mean by the people. The people are not only found in COSATU or the SACP.
All right.
There are fault lines.
I'll allow you to continue with that point, Dr. Mafomadi. I apologize. I'll allow you to continue with that point after the break. When we return, religious leaders warn the current state of affairs is threatening to render South Africa a mafia state, but the president and his backers dismiss this as a political ruse. Stay with us.